Harry, don't be dramatic. If you're going to be incapacitated, you need to transfer the $4,200 right now. I can't have my card declining in first class. Those were the first words my mother said to me while I was strapped to a backboard with 3 broken ribs. She didn't ask if I was alive. She didn't ask about my baby. She just sighed over the noise of hair dryers and demanded her monthly allowance. As the call disconnected, I looked at the blood on my hands and realized the truth. I wasn't her daughter. I was just her wallet. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who is part of our community. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone across the trauma bay in the emergency room. Panic is a luxury you can't afford. When a patient is bleeding out, you don't cry about the blood. You find the source and you apply pressure. I lay there on the backboard staring at the fluorescent lights and my training took over. My body was broken, but my mind had never been clearer. The bleeding wasn't just internal. It was financial. And for the first time in 29 years, I knew exactly how to stop the hemorrhage. The paramedic, a kind woman named Sarah, who had held my hand during the extraction, leaned over me, asking if I needed her to call my husband or a friend. I told her no. I just needed my phone. She hesitated, looking at my trembling hands, but she handed it back. She probably thought I was looking for comfort. She didn't know I was looking for a kill switch. I opened my banking app. My thumb hovered over the screen, steady despite the tremors running through the rest of my body. I didn't navigate to the transfer page. Transferring money takes time. I didn't have time. My mother was standing at a checkout counter somewhere in a salon, expecting my money to flow like water, just as it had for nearly a decade. I went to settings and then to overdraft and guarantor protections. 9 years ago, when I was 20, Pamela had convinced me to link my high-limit account to hers. She called it a safety net for emergencies. But over time, that safety net had become a hammock she lounged in. Every time she swiped her card for something she couldn't afford, my account automatically covered the difference. No declined cards, no embarrassment, just a silent, invisible transfer from my hard work to her luxury. I looked at the status bar. Active linked account. Pamela Miller. I thought about the $4,200 she had just demanded. That wasn't a request for help. It was a demand for rent on a space in her heart I had never actually occupied. I thought about my baby waiting for me while my mother worried about her first-class seat. My compassion had been a luxury she had overdrafted for years. Today the bank was closed. I tapped revoke authorization. A warning popped up asking if I was sure. The doctor stepped up to check my pupils, asking if I was in pain. I whispered that I wasn't anymore. I pressed confirm. The screen refreshed. The little green dot next to my mother's name turned gray. Status unlin. It was done. I didn't move money. I simply stepped out of the way and let gravity take over. I closed my eyes and visualized the moment that was about to happen. She would be walking to the front of the salon, handing over that platinum card with the arrogance of someone who had never paid a bill in full. She would wait for the beep, but this time there would be silence. I finally let the nurse take the phone from my hand and told her she could give me the pain meds now. I had taken care of the emergency. The morphine drip hadn't started yet, but the adrenaline was doing a fine job of keeping me lucid. As I lay there waiting for the nurse to return, my mind drifted to a spreadsheet. I closed my eyes, and the numbers scrolled behind my eyelids, crisp and black against the darkness. It wasn't just the $4,200 she demanded today. That was just the monthly subscription fee for being Pamela Miller's daughter. I started doing the math, calculating the cost of my own exploitation. The base rate was the mortgage on their downsized condo, which was $2,500 a month. Then came the country club dues, which she claimed were essential for networking, even though she hadn't worked a day in 20 years. That was $800. And finally, the medical insurance. $900 a month for a premium policy because Pamela was always convinced she was dying of something vague and expensive. $4,200 a month every month. For 9 years, I did the multiplication. As the 4 fluid finally hit my vein, $4 200 * 108 months, $453,600, nearly $500,000. I could have bought a house. I could have funded a college trust for my baby. I could have traveled the world. Instead, I had purchased a decade of silence from a woman who couldn't be bothered to pause her hair appointment while I was bleeding out on a stretcher. People always ask how I could be so stupid not to see it. But that's the wrong question. I wasn't stupid. I was groomed. Financial grooming isn't something that happens overnight. It starts when you're small. Before you even know what money is. It starts with a lesson that love isn't a birthright. It's a commission. When I was 10, Pamela didn't hug me because I was her child. She hugged me when I won a prize, or when I fixed a problem, or when I made her look good. She taught me that affection was a transaction. If I wasn't useful, I was invisible. By the time I was 20 and working my first nursing job, the programming was complete. Linking my bank account didn't feel like being used. It felt like paying my dues. But love isn't a mortgage. You can't pay it off. The pain medication finally washed over me, but it did nothing to dull the clarity in my mind. The fog of guilt I had lived in for years evaporated. I realized I hadn't been supporting a family. I had been funding a parasite. I was a long-term investment vehicle that had finally decided to stop paying dividends. 3 hours later, the chaos of the trauma bay had settled into the rhythmic mechanical hum of recovery. My ribs were taped, my collarbone was immobilized, and the initial shock had faded into a cold, sharp determination. I wasn't just a patient anymore. I was a hunter. Setting a snare, I signaled Sarah, my friend, and the charge nurse on duty. I told her I needed her to make me look worse than I was, not physically, but medically. I asked her to dim the lights, put a strict isolation sign on the door, and turn the volume on the heart monitor all the way down to silent. When she asked why, I told her that when my mother walked in, my heart rate was going to spike and I didn't want the beeping to give away that I was awake. Sarah didn't ask questions. She adjusted the monitors, lowered the blinds, and placed an oxygen mask over my face. It obscured my expression perfectly. To anyone walking in, I looked heavily sedated, drifting in the grey space between consciousness and a coma. I lay back and waited. It didn't take long. My phone, resting on the plastic tray table next to my head, buzzed. I cracked one eye open. The screen lit up the dim room. Mom. I let it buzz. Then a text message notification pinged. I slid my hand out from under the sheet and tapped the screen. I expected anger. I expected a lecture. But even after 9 years of financial abuse, I wasn't prepared for the sheer audacity of what I read. There was no question about my safety. The text read in all caps. My card declined. The salon is holding my luggage. Fix it. Now I stared at the glowing letters. She wasn't worried about my survival. She was worried about her luggage. Another text came through a minute later. It said, I know you're reading this. If you don't transfer the money in 5 minutes, I'm coming down there. I smiled beneath the plastic mask. It was the confirmation I needed. She wasn't coming to the hospital to hold her daughter's hand. She was coming to force a transaction. She was coming because her ATM was broken and she needed to kick it until it dispensed cash again. 40 minutes later, I heard the clicking of heels on the linoleum floor. It sounded less like a family visiting a bedside and more like a tactical team breaching a perimeter. I kept my eyes closed, regulating my breathing to match the slow, artificial hiss of the oxygen machine. Through the thin curtain, I heard the commotion at the nurse's station. The young receptionist tried to stop them, saying I was in strict isolation. Then Pamela's voice cut through the air, sharp and entitled. She declared she was my mother and introduced Mr. Sterling, our family attorney. She threatened to have the hospital's accreditation under review if they were denied access. It was a masterclass in weaponized bureaucracy. The receptionist crumbled. I heard the buzz of the security door unlocking. They were inside. The curtain ripped back. I felt the air pressure in the room change as 3 people crowded into the small space. There was no gasp of shock, just the rustle of expensive fabric and the click of a briefcase latch. My sister Rebecca commented that I looked like a mess. Pamela snapped at her to focus and asked if I was sedated enough. Mr. Sterling, the lawyer, confirmed I was on a heavy morphine drip and wouldn't feel a thing. I felt a hand on my arm. It wasn't gentle. Pamela grabbed my wrist and lifted my limp hand from the bedsheet. She manipulated my fingers, wiping my thumb with a wet wipe. She asked if the file was ready. Sterling recited the document name. Power of attorney for medical incapacitation. He explained that once they had the biometric signature, they could access the accounts immediately to manage my affairs, including reinstating the overdraft protection and transferring the liquid assets to a trust under their control. I lay there paralyzed by a rage so hot it almost burned through the sedation act. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a locked safe, and they hadn't brought the combination. They had brought a drill. Rebecca urged her to press my thumb now, saying she had the tablet ready. I felt the cold glass of a screen press against the tip of my thumb. My mother was squeezing my wrist, forcing my print onto the sensor to sign away my life. Just as the tablet screen began to glow, expecting the final biometric confirmation, I ripped my hand away from my mother's grip. "Get your hands off me." My voice wasn't slurred. It wasn't weak. It was commanding. Pamela shrieked, stumbling back. Rebecca dropped the tablet. Mr. Sterling froze. I sat up, pulling the oxygen mask off my face. The sedated daughter was gone. The woman who paid their bills for 9 years was gone. I looked directly at my mother and told her I heard everything. The transfer, the trust, the fact that she was more worried about her luggage than my internal bleeding. She stammered that I was faking it. I told her I was protecting myself and that now I had a witness. The door burst open again. Grandpa George entered with the hospital administrator and 2 security guards, moving with the authority of a judge. He ordered the lawyer away from me and slammed a blue folder onto the tray table, a medical power of attorney I had signed years ago, naming him, not my mother, as decision-maker. The administrator confirmed I was awake, legally protected, and that Sterling's attempt to move assets was invalid and dangerously close to criminal coercion. Sterling took one look at me, the document, and the guards and backed down fast, claiming he'd been misinformed. Pamela shrieked that I'd tricked them. My sister grabbed his arm, begging him to stay and reverse the transfer. Sterling demanded a $5,000 retainer. Rebecca shoved a platinum card at him. I smiled. It was my supplementary card. He swiped it, declined. I calmly explained I'd removed her as an authorized user an hour earlier. The card was worthless. Sterling scoffed and walked out. Grandpa ordered security to remove Pamela and Rebecca, calling my mother a trespasser as they dragged her into the hallway. She texted me through the glass, threatening to sue over the $453,000 she'd taken. I replied clinically, if it was a loan, I'd issue a recall. If a gift, she'd sign a tax waiver today. Which was it? Her answer came fast. It was rent payment for raising you. My income got her. I reported her to the IRS, attaching the screenshot and 9 years of transfers unreported income. Nearly $500,000. 18 months later, they seized her accounts, placed a lien on her condo, and auctioned it off to cover taxes and fraud penalties. My mother now works retail. Rebecca is negotiating a plea deal for credit card fraud. Then an envelope arrived from the Treasury Department. Inside a whistleblower reward check, $41,350. Not everything I lost, but enough for a new home and my daughter's future. They tried to destroy me. Instead, their greed paid for my freedom. I didn't lose a family. I lost a payroll. And I got my life back.